Welcome to Chronic Conversations, the podcast that brings a voice to the stories behind chronic symptoms. I'm your host, Katherine Rose, certified integrative health practitioner, founder of ThriveWell, and soon to be published author. After years of battling unexplained symptoms and finally getting a diagnosis of Hashimoto's, I turned my pain into purpose. Now I help women just like you feel seen, heard, and validated, while uncovering the root causes of symptoms and helping to create lasting wellness. Each week, I'll share insights from my own journey, some proven strategies that I use with clients, and conversations with fellow experts and warriors. You're not alone, and you can thrive. Now let's get into today's conversation. Hey everybody, welcome back to Chronic Conversations. I am so glad to be back recording after the holidays. And today we're going to be talking about something that's often overlooked, but could be the root cause of your chronic symptoms, and that is mold. So today I'm joined by Adam and Sean, the powerhouse duo behind The Mold Show. I'm a very big fan. These two are known for their straight talk, their compassion, their passion, and their ability to break down mold science in a way that actually makes sense. More importantly, they see people like us, they hear people like us, and support people like us. I know you all come here to feel seen, heard, validated, supported, and these guys do exactly that. And what I mean by people like us, we've got fatigue, we've got anxiety, rashes, brain fog, autoimmune flares, and, they take those symptoms seriously. A lot of their clients are women and people like us that are exhausted, feel dismissed, and desperate for answers, only to find that the real issue is actually growing behind their walls. Adam and Sean, to me, are just amazing. They have big hearts. They are doing this because they care about the people and clients that they serve. Adam is into remediation and Sean is more on the inspection side, but they both have a passion and a big heart for the work that they do and the clients that they serve, like I said before. So whether you're trying to prevent mold, wondering if you're safe in your home, or already know that you've been exposed, this episode is full of practical do's and don'ts, clear red flags, and steps you can take right now to protect your health and your home. So let's get into it. First, want y'all, if you don't mind, tell a little bit about yourself, how you got into what you're into, and just brief little, I've already done the intro. I've introduced y'all and talked about you a little bit before all this. Just let her rip.
Sure. Well, I was born in, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go that far.
I mean, if you
in a small little town.
Me too.
I got into this industry through the insurance industry. I was an insurance adjuster, property insurance adjuster, estimator, and did that for over 10 years, and then got onto the restoration side, was hired by a restoration company to be their estimator, and then ended up being pretty quickly their project manager and then their general manager. And then at that point, I kind of had eyes on doing it myself. So I dove into the water damage, fire, water, smoke industry, and mold was one of the things that back then people pretended to do properly before there was any real guidelines in place and no licensing. It was, carpet cleaning companies everywhere tearing mold out. And then once they started to license it, I jumped at that real quickly. And then from there, just fell in love with it, fell in love with the process of it, and began to specialize. And it's been almost 10 years now. I've been doing primarily mold projects. So remediation only for me. And I dabble, I shadow Sean sometimes on the testing side of things, just to kind of get my feet wet on that side, just to kind of figure out that area, and gain some more perspective on how that works as well.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, and for me, I've been in the industry since 2014 now. Did a little bit of shadowing before that. The owner of our company at Certified Mold Assessments in Tampa, Florida,
Mhm.
Al Raven, when he started this company, it took off a lot faster than he ever anticipated. And I was kind of in a place where I was looking for something new.
Yeah.
Had a background in criminal justice, so the investigative side of things,
Yes.
really what interests me, I think. So yeah, we've been doing very thorough mold assessments ever since then. And in about 2016, 17, 18, I can't remember the exact year, it's when we really started noticing our clients complaining about unusual symptoms. Their doctors, their spouses think they're crazy. The one thing all those people had in common was significant mold issues in their home. So
Mhm.
we started to think about the similarities with our clients. And luckily, some of our colleagues were already going to medical conferences, learning about mold, how it affects health. And they asked us to come along with them. So we did.
Mhm.
Started learning from these functional medicine doctors how mold can affect people in all these different ways. And ever since then, we kind of reinvented our inspection process, diving a lot deeper, not only with the physical inspection side of things, but the testing to really figure out what people are being exposed to.
Yeah. That's amazing. It gave me goosebumps because I'm in the integrative, I guess, functional world, but most people outside of it, that would sound like a foreign language to them. And, taking into account symptoms people are getting and relating it to mold is huge. There's so many people out there with symptoms, chronic illness. That's, my main audience are women with chronic illness. Anyway, I just think that's amazing. I didn't want to interrupt you, but
Oh, no problem. It's funny you say that because I'm sure people are going to be familiar now with ERMI type of testing. People can do themselves, dust testing, environmental relative mold index, where you sample from the dust in the home, send it into the lab, and they tell you what species of molds are in your home. We've been doing that for almost 10 years. And 10 years ago, people looked at us like we were crazy. Junk science doesn't tell you anything. But when you correlate it with what we're finding in the home and what's at the sources, it makes a lot of sense. So, I'm glad people are becoming more familiar with it. But 10 years ago, we were looked at like we were nuts for doing that type of testing.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and 10 years ago, from a water mitigation, mold remediation standpoint, and the processes were very unskilled, I would say. Most restoration companies, had no clue to how to properly handle it. And it wasn't much different than doing demo and spraying chemicals or trying to chemically kill
bleach,
things. Bleaching,
Index,
using biocides. That was like my first real exposure to it, where companies like Microban really kind of heavily started to invest in the restoration industry, and using the use of biocides and mildicides became prevalent in the water damage side of it, so the drying side of the industry. But there was no known best practices, protocols, and procedures for how to properly remove mold, or at least in this state, there wasn't anything, definitive in regards to how you did it. And once that changed, it really kind of gave people in this industry direction, at least ones that cared about how it's done, the processes and whatnot. It changed everything. And because I enjoyed the science of it, the challenge of it, and I'd already been on the discovery side of it in regards to figuring out cause and origin. Because as an insurance adjuster, that's what you do on every claim you get. You got to figure out, why is it there? What's causing it? Mm-hmm. And that determines whether or not the claim is covered. So I'd already been heavily trained in that mindset. And on the mold side, it's always trying to discover why. That needs to be an enormous piece of what you're doing, because otherwise it'll go right back.
It will. It's like the root cause in health. Like, what's the root cause of the mold?
And sometimes that can be the most difficult to find and the most expensive.
Y'all, real quick, before we jump back into today's episode, I want to take a minute to talk to you, especially if anything you've heard so far has felt a little too familiar. If you've ever felt dismissed, misunderstood, or like you're navigating your health completely on your own, I created something for you. And it's called the Kaya Collective. Kaya stands for Come As You Are. Don't worry, it's not another program or place just to get more information. It's a space where you don't have to explain your symptoms, prove your pain, or push through to just keep up. Inside the Kaya Collective, you'll find real conversations, support from women who actually get it, and tools to help you actually understand what your body is trying to tell you. but without the overwhelm. It's for women who are doing all the right things, but still don't feel right. The woman who's tired of surface level answers and ready for something deeper, and the woman who just wants to feel seen, heard, and supported. Again, if that sounds like you, I would love to have you inside. You can learn more at the link in the show notes, and I'd love to see you there. All right, let's get back into today's episode.
Sometimes people spend just as much money trying to figure out the root cause as they do on the actual remediation, but it's just as important.
It is. I know it is. Sean, I think it's for you, like the medical grade mold inspection.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's what I read, at least. What does that mean to you, or the inspection, like compared to somebody else that would go in and look for mold? Like, what's the difference? Or y'all both, I guess the medical grade has to do with what both of y'all do. But I found that really interesting and fascinating, and I want to hear all about it.
Yeah, it does tie into what Adam does, absolutely. But the reason why we phrase it that way is because of how thorough our inspection process is. First and foremost, majority of our business, I'd say over 75% of our business, is our clients that are immune compromised in some way, shape, or form. They have known mold illness, some sort of autoimmune issue, so their bodies really aren't capable of handling some sort of mold exposure. Mm-hmm. So we go in trying to find the sources and test in a way to figure out, first and foremost, what they've been exposed to and how to fix it. And it's a very, very deep dive. I think when most people we talk to think of a mold inspection, they think of somebody coming in right with a tripod. They set up an air pump, run that for a little while to collect what's floating around in the air. And that helps them determine what's going on in a home. But with mold air samples, they can be extremely unreliable. You'll even hear a lot of people say useless. I don't think they're useless. I think they're unreliable because it's just a snapshot of those 5 minutes in time, 5 or 10 minutes that you happen to be collecting that air sample, where a proper mold inspection, you're diving deep, you're trying to figure out where the sources are, you're testing in wall cavities, and we even test for certain species of molds that can produce mycotoxins, but also for mycotoxins in a home, which is sometimes a huge breakthrough for people when we can correlate those species of molds or the molds in their home with what's showing up in their urine or blood testing.
Yes. Yep.
It's funny, Sean, you mentioned your background and it was in criminal justice and how there's some similarities because you're an investigator. And for some reason, while you were talking, I was just kind of envisioning how it probably used to be when, people first became aware that there were issues mold-wise and how things have changed over time. Your tools, your tactics, how you look for it, how evasive you do. Like back in the day, a cop would just show up at a crime scene and, utilize what was in front of them. Now the process of investigation is so sophisticated, DNA sampling, like what they do now to figure out, the cause is tremendous. And I've seen that on the other side of it, right? 'Cause remediators don't get involved in that. We're not there to find your mold. We're there to remove it. Mm-hmm. I've seen a change in the industry, and especially, really, I've kind of grown up in it with Sean. We've done so many projects together over the years that I think we both have sharpened our skills just based off of the experiences we've had together in buildings, figuring out what to do and more importantly, why, and then how to educate the client in regards to fixing the source issue so it doesn't come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In remediation, do you ever experience symptoms?
Well, how much time you got? I would say, it's hard because I'm a typical stubborn male. I don't
Yes.
had myself tested very much. Mm-hmm. I'll be 50 in March, and there's some things that have happened in the last couple of years which kind of are similar to things that some of my clients complain about. Like I've developed a hypersensitivity to perfumes and odors, which I never used to have. Never. Yeah. I would never, I'd be in the candle aisle at TJ Maxx smelling every candle. I can't even go near that aisle now. It's like, it's intrusive. I'll walk that near the grocery store and near the detergent aisle, and it's the same way. So I would say I'm starting to see signs of it. And clearly I'm in a lot of moldy buildings, and I do my best to protect myself when I can, but there's been a lot of exposure since when I first was a young little puppy insurance adjuster walking in disgusting houses with no protection. And,
Yeah.
after raw sewage had been in the environment, just
Yeah.
not caring, to the point where I'm definitely more protective of that, and more aware of what I could potentially be dealing with. And that a lot of it comes from talking to my clients.
Yeah. You should test yourself. You got to take care of yourself.
It's funny. I should say work with. We do so many inspections and we run into so many people. We go to conferences now at least 2-3 times a year. So lucky enough to talk with a lot of functional medicine doctors that are always preaching that to us. You have to protect yourself. And lucky enough, I have those relationships where I can ask them what I can take from a supplement standpoint as preventative measures, but also if I ever start to feel off. But a lot of times my wife can realize it before even I do when I'm feeling symptoms, which isn't often anymore because I do a really good job of protecting myself. Adam has seen me walk around with a respirator all day long, with long sleeves, a hat, just protecting my skin even. But yeah, it's something I'm always thinking about because I did have a few experiences probably about 6 years ago dealing with body aches and swelling in my joints, just unexplained stuff. And once I started protecting myself and I feel like I rid myself of some of those toxins, I've never had them come back.
Oh, good. Good.
I'm careful, but I'm not as careful as Sean.
Okay. Well, I'm going to continue to check in on y'all. Okay.
Good. We need it.
Yeah, we do. We definitely do.
I'm a practitioner first, so that comes to my mind. I'm trying.
I do take better care of myself. I mean, I've had similar things too, and I fast every day. I'm a big proponent in regards to allowing my body some time to deal with everything, including the foods I put in my body.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful, and take some peptides and things like that, which I've had a noticeable positive response to.
Oh,
so
good.
I know that's not necessarily exactly down your avenue.
You're not shaming.
I'm stubborn.
You're stubborn. All right. Well, that's fine.
There's one practitioner in general I can think of every time I see her. The first question, Sean, you protecting yourself when you're out there?
Yeah.
You making sure you're not being exposed too much? So yeah, we do need people to check on us and make sure we're doing that.
Yeah.
Good. No, I could go on that all day, but we're not on that topic. We're talking about what y'all are doing and things like that. What are the most common symptoms that y'all's clients bring up?
I would say for me, it's like the neurological, the brain fog, the dissociative feeling of being in and around it. You hear the respiratory. Some people complain about allergy type symptoms, but I think by and large, that's one of the ones I hear, especially from men, where they seem to have cognitively issues, having been exposed or living in a space where they're suffering long-term, prolonged exposures to it. That's a common one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's symptoms ranging all over the board, really, with mold. It's so funny how historically people just think of asthma and allergy like symptoms, but people deal with so many different things. But the overwhelming is probably just the fatigue. No matter how much sleep they get, they just still feel so tired, and the cognitive issues. And by and large, it seems like the female in the house are the ones that are affected the most, or at least aware of those symptoms and complaining about the symptoms.
Willing to admit.
Yeah. And a lot of times with the husbands, it's, I'll know I'm fine, but then we'll have a separate conversation with the wife who's noticed a difference in his how his speech, how he thinks, his memory, things of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of times I will hear, or at least maybe it's ironic, I don't know, that the husbands either won't have as many symptoms or maybe won't admit as many symptoms. But a lot of times they'll say, well, I can breathe fine, like my lungs are fine. I feel like it's a lot of times thought of as just respiratory and not neurological or.
Right.
Yeah.
I think before I even knew about mold, I always would assume it was an allergen. I always think of like sneezing and coughing. Like would be where my head would be at if I didn't live in this weird world that I do now.
Yeah.
So I think that just not even connecting the dots becomes an issue for people.
And lack of education.
They would never dream that they could somehow be affecting their nervous system in any way.
Yeah.
Like to be able to tie the two together, you just think of little dusts and spores and they get in your nose and you sneeze them out, and maybe it causes that type of response. I think it's due to lack of discussion, education, whatever you want to call it, where You just don't know. And that's the problem ultimately, is that everybody has a different level of responses, even at different phases of their lives. I think
Right. Yeah.
that's also something we don't talk about. Your body's already dealing with something.
We're already overloaded before the mold.
Yeah.
With
And then mold becomes an issue. Look out. You're in big trouble, most likely. So, I think that there's just so many variables, which is why it's tough. Plus, men suffer in silence usually. You don't, so a lot of them do. And they're not, pride, whatever you call it, stupidity. They're not going to tell you when they're struggling, when they're hurting. So
most won't. Some will.
Some will. Yeah. I can see the people that watch your show. They're probably all like, "Yep, I know exactly."
They may be like that. So those are some of the symptoms. When I've been exposed to mold, the times that I've known about, mine have mostly all been neurological and fatigue. I think that combined with other things triggered my Hashimoto's. Mold is a beast. And just thinking about it, my last experience with it was in a rental house. I lived in it for 8 months, like just 8 months. And just over the course of that 8 months, I can see even like physical changes in pictures or videos or whatever I've seen over time, because you become not only internally, you become inflamed, like inflammation, whether it's in your brain, all over your body. Like the physical changes are crazy too. But anyway, my point is, so I was in a rental house and I told the landlord about it. They are of the thinking, I'll bring in my cleaning crew, is what they said. And, we'll bleach it and it'll be fine. And I know myself, like, y'all aren't touching this mold while I'm living in here. They wouldn't do it correctly, nor would it kill it. I knew enough about it not to let them come in and do that. And they weren't going to remediate in any way or pay for that. And so eventually I broke the lease. And anyway, that's that. But my mycotoxin test, my doctor was like, we've seen a lot of mold mycotoxin tests, or some bad ones, but yours is bad. And I'm like, okay, awesome. So every single kind of mold, spore type, whatever is still probably in my body. So my question was,
tenant landlord.
That was my question. Like how many?
I talk badly about on our podcast. I
Okay.
don't like them. Property management companies don't like them. They don't want to see me or Sean walk through the door. I will say that in most cases.
But they see dollar signs, right?
There's one that hired us a couple weeks ago, and he's just like, can't believe the recommendations I made. It's just don't hire us if you don't want us to give you the truth.
They don't want to hear about it, and they would prefer that you break the lease at that point. Once somebody starts to make enough noise,
I know they didn't want me to
educates themselves. Like they're happy to let people out at that point because
they were
gonna bleach it, paint over it, and move the next person in.
Do you know who the next person was to move in? Was their head of maintenance, who was my main point of contact, who I was telling about this mold. He and his family are in that house. And I told him before when I was living in it. And after he told me they're moving in, I'm like, look. And I sent them my mycotoxin lab results and things like that. And I was like, if y'all start getting, weird symptoms or anything feels off, know that it's probably that mold and it's not good for your body. But that's their decision. They're in that house. It's not my problem. But yeah, I believe that y'all aren't friends.
I'm glad you were able to get out of that without having any penalties, first and foremost. But my best advice for people in that situation, it's a lot of times it's hard to bite the bullet and pay to have an assessment done. But when you have validation through a certified or licensed company that shows the validation of mold, and you have the set protocol and so forth, once they start seeing those dollar signs on how to approach that, following guidelines, it's usually a slam dunk to be able to get out of that lease without any penalties.
Yeah, absolutely. And for most people, yes. The sump pump got unplugged at this rental house and it rained a lot the weeks prior to that. The water started to seep up through the floors in the basement. And anyway, I didn't get my deposit back because of that, but I didn't, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, and that's
You're out of there.
that
You're out of there. That's all that matters.
that's gray or black water. So it's already got who knows what in it. Right?
Oh.
Anything that was in the ground, any chemicals that were in the ground are now inside your interior environment. Now that all that's soaked into the drywall, the walls, the flooring. So mold just becomes a piece of the concern when you have water intrusion like that, where it comes outside the building envelope in. They don't want to hear it. And then as soon as, if they're forced to hear it and Sean or somebody like them puts together an assessment or a report, they're going to run. They usually do.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's unfortunate, but it totally makes sense. This is kind of on a different topic, but in one of y'all's Instagram videos, you talked about or listed like the myths or phrases that you hear commonly. I don't know if they come from spouses or landlords, but like it's, of course, if you look hard enough, you're going to find mold somewhere.
I like that.
I mean, that was one of them. And I've heard that one before. So what do y'all hear the most, or what like makes y'all internally roll your eyes the most?
Well, that's one of them. Of course, you're going to find mold if you look hard enough, especially when they're saying that to me as an inspector who's been hired to find mold and prioritize the areas of concern in a building. Well, yeah, that's what I'm here to do, is look hard and find where there's mold. So that makes me laugh. The other is, when we're traveling around and people say, well, you live in Florida, there must be a lot of mold there. Well, yeah, we get a lot of rain, but mold's not all about just the water that comes in from the outside or high humidity. Anywhere where you have running water, you can have mold issues. I mean, we see some of the worst mold issues in attics where you have ice damming, where it snows, or basements where the basement's below grade and the water runoff gets into the basement. So it's everywhere. It's not just based off of where you live.
Yeah.
Right.
If water's available, mold is available.
Oh,
So that's
such an unfortunate phrase. That's a good one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say it's not the mold's fault, right? We're just providing places it loves to live
Right.
in. That's all.
That's very true.
Yeah.
It is specific to when there's just one person sick in a house and I hear somebody else in the house saying, well, if there's mold here, wouldn't I be sick too?
Oh,
Yeah.
And it's just simply not the case. I mean, your immune system may be better at fighting off these pathogens that you're being exposed to, but that doesn't mean that there's not something going on in this house. And typically it takes our long 8-hour inspection. Al, the owner of our company, usually spends 1 to 2 hours before we even go out there educating people. But it usually takes till they see the lab results for it to click and say, okay, there's probably something going on here that we need to take a little more seriously.
I
yeah.
like to hit them with the peanut analogy, right? Peanuts might kill me if I eat them, but you may be able to eat them. Like, just because I have a response doesn't mean you will. That's the way it goes for a lot of things in life. That's why, because there's so many variables, your response, my response could be completely different.
Right.
Or you're just not even aware of your response because you don't think about it. It's not extreme to the point where you've associated these two things together. Mine is probably, it's mildew, which I hear a lot. It's not mold, it's mildew.
Right. They're the same thing, right?
Generally speaking, I'm not a biologist, but you're talking about something in the same realm.
Yeah.
That's the handyman's way of telling you. He's trying to say it in a way that you don't get freaked out.
Yeah, there is
Okay.
technically a difference, but where there's smoke, there's fire. Typically, if you have that type of visible growth of biolife, like mushrooms coming out of the carpet and things like that,
Have you seen it? I guess you probably have.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
we love.
I've seen them coming up out of a shower floor before through the grout lines.
Awesome.
Yeah, so the fungi is different than the mold spore, but typically there's lots of mold if there's fungus growing out of your, visually growing out of your material. So, it's usually a party at that point. And if there's signs that you have biolife, growing, typically it's all there, and different types of molds and things like that. So.
Sure.
Yeah, and if your listeners are ever to hear that phrase, it's just mildew, not mold. First and foremost, if somebody in our industry tells you that, run for the hills.
Run. Yes.
Yeah. Second of all, we still want to know why it's happening so it doesn't get worse, right? We need to figure out why there's moisture in this area or in this building to cause that so it doesn't get worse.
Right.
Right. No, absolutely. If somebody suspects mold, whether, it's visible or not. Some people might not know that it's actually mold. What are like the first few steps you would tell somebody? What should they do?
Well, typically for me, I'm going to recommend they have an assessment done, have some testing done. It's the mold is not always visible. As a matter of fact, most of the time it isn't.
Right.
Take some exploratory and evasive testing a lot of times if you're looking to see it with your eyes. In some cases, you can't even get to it because it's behind a vanity cabinet that's up against a wall that has two common walls. And so you're not going to see it, but then the assessor might go in from the backside and take an air sample in that wall cavity. And all of a sudden, you've got every type of growth under the sun off the charts levels. And so just the out of sight, out of mind thing a lot of times gives people a false sense of security. I always say look for water damage because usually that's another kind of phrase people like to throw at it to, not alarm people. But if water damage is present, there's a pretty good chance that mold growth is there as well.
Right.
Especially if it wasn't mitigated quickly. Or there are plies of material that got wet. It's not just one material, but if it got wet behind your cabinet, it's not going to dry quickly.
Yeah.
And you're just giving, BioLife a chance to thrive in those circumstances. And you typically see it.
Yeah.
And by the time they get to us, I told you, Al, the owner of our company, he does such a thorough upfront phone call just to make sure we're understanding the history as much as we can, their concerns as much as we can, to make sure they understand our process, make sure we're a good fit for them.
Yeah.
We're just not a mold assessment company. Ours is a process. It's a several week long process by the time everything's said and done. But he likes to ask 3 questions in particular that I think helps people realize that there could be a problem. The first is, how do you feel when you're away from your home? Some people have no idea. They haven't thought about it, but then they will go away for a little while and they feel a lot better. And when they come home, they start to feel poorly again. The second one is, when did you start feeling poorly? A lot of times that answer is, well, shortly after we moved into this house, or shortly after this water event happened, shortly after that water event happened.
Yeah.
And the third is just asking questions about the history of the house. Some people take those little leaks as if they're insignificant, and for us, can be a huge clue, something going on. So a lot of times people start thinking about all those different water events that could have happened over the years, and it starts to click when they think about when they started feeling symptomatic.
Yeah.
The history of the home for us is very important. Not everyone's going to know the full history of the house.
Sure.
But knowing that history helps us know where to go to test or where to look further, especially if there's not an active water leak.
Right.
Yeah, for guys like us, there's no minor water damage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And water damage, how is it handled? If you even know that, if you know that it was there, but was it mitigated properly? How quickly did they get to it? How long was it leaking? What actually got wet? How is the building constructed? Are the walls insulated? Like, there's just so many variables. And, people assume if they just mop it up that everything looks good. But,
or paint over it.
Yeah.
Or paint over it, which is how it was done forever. Up to this part of history here in the last 10 plus years, the guidelines started in New York, right? I think that's where the industry ultimately got its start, because they had so many issues with tenant landlord problems and mold and rentals and things like that. So they came up with a process for it, but it's taken a long time for it to find its way in all the other states and become an industry.
Is it different in every state? Y'all might have said this in the beginning. Okay. Yeah. Who regulates in the state?
The state itself.
The state itself, I guess that's all. Yeah.
And there's only a handful of states, maybe 5 to 7 now, that require licensing.
Right.
In our state, you have to have a separate for assessor and remediation, and you cannot work in the same location. You're not supposed to anyway. Yeah. I still see companies doing it and getting away with it, but it's not set up that way in all the states that require licensing. And for the rest of the country, it's just kind of like the Wild West.
Yeah, testing your own work, when you think about it, if the company's remediating it and then testing it afterwards to tell you that they did a good job,
sure,
it's always a bit of a bad idea. And before this was a licensable thing in the state, probably because I came from the insurance world, where like half of my claims ended up going to court with sinkholes and stuff. I was like, there's no world where I'm testing my own work. I want an independent assessment done to show that we've done it properly and to a testable clarity, I should say.
Sure. Yeah. And I think obviously, or at least to me and what I've seen and heard about y'all, you're passionate about what you do. You care, you have a heart, you're caring about these people and the work that you're doing, whether you're inspecting or remediating, which I think is amazing and very commendable. And I appreciate y'all, even though y'all haven't done any work for me.
I'll say this, we're outside of the industry.
Sure.
Most people in the assessment and remediation world service the insurance companies. That's it. That's their only reason for existing.
Yeah.
They provide emergency services. They get most of their leads. They're part of that big conglomerate, and they're there to service the insurance industry.
Yeah.
And because of that, that's all they care about ultimately when they're involved in these projects is how much is the insurance company going to cover? Are they going to even cover it? Do I care about remediating this project, or do I just care about doing what the insurance company is going to cover for this client?
And getting out as fast as possible.
And getting in and out as fast as possible. That's a big problem. And ultimately, in my mind, a conflict of interest as well, because if I'm working in your home, you are my customer. You are my client. If I hold the license and it's my expertise, then I have to look out for you first. And I can't be scared of telling you what needs to be done because I'm afraid that the insurance company's not going to pay for it. And therefore, even though I know that wall next to where I just found mold probably has mold, I'm not even going to dig over there. I'm not even going to look because I already know that the insurance company is going to minimize it. They're going to cap it. And I'm going to have to go after the homeowner to try to help pay for the additional work that's necessary. And because of that, that's their mindset going in for the most part. They just care about quickly getting in, minimize it, getting out. And it's a problem. Yeah,
I've seen it as well, just experiencing it on the other side. Yep. And since my landlord wouldn't do anything about it originally, this was probably I don't know how many months in, but I didn't see the mold until the day we moved in. And so I was already stressed. I was flared just from the move in general. And when we moved in and I saw that mold in the windowsill, which y'all probably see a lot, and that wasn't the only place, but it was in my bedroom. And I was like, I can't physically move again, immediately. And so I was desperate to the landlord to do something. I ended up paying, which this probably didn't, y'all might laugh. It might not have done anything, but I had somebody come in and fog the house with peroxide. And it's okay, you can tell me I'm out of it now. Peroxide and what's a combination with that? Maybe you don't know, peroxide and something.
Well, there's so many products out there that have peroxide
in
it. There are peroxides that are used in the industry, but it's more an abrasive measure to try to help remove things off of surfaces versus doing anything removal standpoint. Mm-hmm. It's fogging is a method we use, but only to help knock down what's in the air. But you're still physically trying to clean the surfaces, similar to after a snow where it kind of takes everything out of the air, all the particulate down to the ground. Yeah. That would be the only real reason to utilize it, unless you're just trying to get for sanitization purposes. If we're talking about removal, and how effective it is, it's just there's no way of knowing. So I don't think you hurt anything by doing that necessarily. Although peroxide is caustic and can cause damage to metals, and I wouldn't fog peroxide typically. But it may have been something that had it in there in some small concentrate versus
it was mixed with something, and we had to leave the house.
Yeah, and that's another thing. When you go in with the mindset of killing, if that's the words that come out of your remediator's mouth or restoration contractor's mouth, kill mold, you might want to shop for a different remediation contractor because that's not what remediation is designed to do. I'm not here to kill your mold. Mm-hmm. I couldn't kill all the mold in your house with a flamethrower. So the goal is to remove the growth and then try to bring the particulate level in that environment down as low as possible. And that's done through physical removal of materials and physically cleaning the surfaces. That's it. There's no free lunch in this industry. If there was, I wouldn't be in business, and we would be fogging, things into environment to kill mold. And if it was effective, there wouldn't be this industry wouldn't exist. But
Right.
until we can fog little nanobots in there that go in and find every spore and eat them, I'll probably have a job, or this industry will be around for a long time.
I do think if the goal was to just knock particles down while you were renting and just doing your best to survive in that environment, it probably was helpful, but certainly not remediation.
Right.
Absolutely. Like remediation is, hands down.
Extreme. Yeah, it's the extreme.
The way to go, though, if you want to get, as far as I know, if you want to be able to live in that environment you're in where the mold is, if you don't get it remediated,
it goes even deeper than that. It's there for a reason. The remediation process is like cutting the cancer out, but then you have to then figure out if that window's leaking after we remove all the materials that are now there because of the leak. Because you've caused mold growth, then you have to repair the window. You have to replace the window. You have to weatherproof the window. Whatever is the reason it's leaking, that's part of the process.
right?
So just painting over the mold on the wall isn't going to stop anything. The leak is still going to occur. Water will continue to leak into the wall. You'll continue to grow more biolife, including molds, and it will come right back again.
Yep.
I mean, I use the shower as an example. Everybody on the planet has bleached the mold in their shower and used a little scrub brush and scrubbed it, and it disappeared, and they felt good about themselves until a month later, it's back. And not only is it in the corner that you just brushed, but it's a little further and a little further and a little further. And next thing you know, it's everywhere. It's in all the caulk and all the grout. And you're wondering what's going on. Well, you spread the mold by trying to brush it and clean it. Right? So you took that brush that has all the mold spores and you hit all the rest of your grout in your shower with that. And then you took a shower and you
deteriorated your grout along the way.
Right, exactly. And then you took a shower and
You're breathing all that in.
you added water back into the scenario. You're causing the growth a lot of times by spreading it, by trying to clean it and bleach it. And it never really went away to begin with. And for people who are going to ask, well, then what do I do? You really actually want to get a grout tool and dig out, if you're going to do it on your own, it's a small amount of visible issue. You want to take that grout out and replace it with some fresh grout versus trying to clean it and then, potentially spreading it in your showers and things like that. Or build a shower without grout. That's a good one too.
All right.
Or and reseal your grout, people. That's something you got to do every so often. People don't realize you got to reseal your grout to help protect it.
Yes, you do.
And that's something too. I think this was in one of y'all's phrases on Instagram too, but I mean, it's a shower. People say there's moisture in the shower, but there's something deeper than that that's going on, causing that growth. Is that what y'all are saying?
Well, the problem is the water doesn't typically stay in the shower because a lot of times the showers are designed poorly or they're not maintained. And so eventually the water finds its way either under the tile or outside of the shower envelope into the walls around the shower, which are built from materials that aren't made to get wet.
Yeah.
And then you are then, creating an environment molds like to grow. And so a lot of times it has to do with the construction, how well it was constructed, how well it was designed, what the shower is built of, how it was made, and how diligent you are at keeping the spaces in and around the shower dry. In the shower, a lot of times you'll see some small issues, but then when you start looking outside of the shower or in the common walls around the shower is where you find a lot of the issues because water has found its way out.
It makes sense.
Yeah, we have little moisture meters that we use in showers.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in those type of showers where you're seeing a little bit of the mold growth, we'll put our moisture meter to that and it's just spiking off the charts. And natural reaction for people is, well, this is a shower. We take showers here. Of course the walls are going to be wet. Well, this moisture meter is penetrating the surface of that. So it's picking up what's behind that. And a lot of times we'll get our borescope camera into those walls and you can either see the mold wicking up the wall or you can see the shower pan not tight up against the wall and you see water just sitting in the shower pan. Sometimes you don't see shower pans at all in showers that were designed to have one. So a lot of it comes just down to how the shower was constructed.
Yeah. Yeah, and you shouldn't be okay with materials staying wet in your house and saying, oh, yeah, it's a shower. It's supposed to be wet. That's part of the problem. We think that that's okay.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not the mold's fault. It's there. It's the fact that you provide an environment it likes to grow. And if something stays wet, 9 out of 10 times, if it's wet long enough or wet often enough, and stays wet, it'll probably grow some biolife on it, including mold spores. So dry is the goal always if you want to avoid having growth in your environment. You're going to have mold spores come in and out with you every single day and on your Amazon packages and your kids and your dogs. And so it's there, but once you add water, then you're talking about a different situation at that point.
Yeah.
And so cleaning and upkeep help keep the particulate level down in your house, and using good air filters and filtration systems and well-designed air conditioning systems. But keeping it dry is how you avoid the growth in the first place.
Yeah. Very well said. That brings up so many questions. I know I'm not going to keep y'all long. I want to touch on quickly new construction, but also something else y'all said. We had a beach house right before we were under contract. Hurricane came, attic fan blew out, so it rained. Poured in the house for, I don't know, days. And they pulled everything down to the studs. But all that said, y'all saying, see how you feel when you get out of the house, when you leave your, I guess, main house. I know not everybody has multiple houses. Anyway, I was going from one house with mold to another house with mold. Sometimes you can't get away from it. With new construction, I want to talk a little bit about that, because until I moved into a newer house, I guess the house that I live in now, I've never lived in one this new. I think one other family lived in before we moved in. And, I don't see any signs of mold. I don't feel like I smell anything. I'm feeling better. And this isn't just for me, it's for anybody, that has had mold experience or lives in a new house. I'm sure there are multiple possibilities of how and when and where mold could get into a new dwelling. But what are the top few ways? I know building supplies and things like that, but I'm just curious.
So down here, we're seeing a lot of attic ventilation issues with the newer construction. I don't know why they can't get it right, designing these attics to breathe properly. And with some of these builders, we're pointing out the same issue over and over and over again, but they continue to build them the same way. And when you have issues in an attic space, specifically with ventilation, that can have a domino effect on the ductwork, the AC system. So it's not just the attic ventilation you're worried about anymore. Now you're worried about all the ducts sweating on the insulation and ceiling. You're worried about the AC not working properly. You're worried about excess humidity in the house. So right now down here, that's what we're dealing with mostly, is trying to get the attic ventilation correct and how that has an impact on the AC and balancing that correctly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. New construction doesn't give you much protection. And ultimately, new doesn't mean that there's not mold there. The EPA's website says mold can start to grow and form in 72 hours. Mm-hmm. It's not a long time. And so a lot of times during the process of the build, like you alluded to earlier, some of the materials they use has growth on them.
Yeah. Adam, we've worked on projects together in the last few years where there's significant window leaking issues in brand new homes, less than a year old.
All those things. Mm-hmm. Yeah. New construction, because they don't build it like they used to, literally, especially here in the state of Florida. Be careful. Everything is just built quick, fast, cheap, poorly, with unskilled laborers, with very little oversight, with very little ramifications for building it improperly. And so because of that, there's no incentive, because they don't care if they get sued by 1% of their clients. They're still making big money.
Yeah.
And 1% to them is leakage, and they can deal with it, because the other 99% don't complain and they never hear back from anybody, and ultimately aren't held accountable for building crappy houses.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to fearmonger, but you're in your environment, you're in your new house, you're wondering, what can I look for, right? I want to keep my house clean. I have a saying, Sean, you hear me say all the time, your air conditioner is enemy number one when it comes to quickly getting into an environment where you could be exposed right away, because molds love to grow in air conditioning systems.
Yeah.
And quickly, new build, old build, doesn't matter. It's cold system. And in your case, you live in North Carolina, a humid environment. And when cold and humidity meet anywhere along the system, including inside the air handlers, you can and will grow molds. And so that's usually smoking gun for a lot of people, outside of all the structural issues and bathrooms and showers and kitchens and plumbed areas. But ACs for sure would be something you need to keep an eye on, have inspected thoroughly, regularly for visible mold issues. Because most air conditioning contractors will use the mildew word. And they're like, it's cooling.
It's normal. We see that everywhere.
It's normal. Right. So to them it is, because they don't care, because they're not qualified to talk about it, qualified to clean it, qualified to...
Not their problem.
Right. And sometimes it's their poor installation that caused it to be there in the first place. They're definitely not going to make you aware of it because they don't want to be responsible for it.
Right.
So ACs for sure is where I would focus, my initial intention on keeping it clean as possible, keeping it dry, make sure it's not leaking cold air into humid spaces, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I would put that as the number one overlooked or neglected part of a home too, the AC system, which is too bad because it's literally the lungs of our home, right? It's supplying all the air we breathe. It has the ducts, which are the lungs of the house, supplying all the air. And if we don't keep that unit clean, it is going to start pushing those contaminants into the ductwork and contaminate the ductwork. We work with an AC company here that opens those plenums all the time, which is where all the duct board is connected right above the units. He'll open those all the time, and there's visible growth all up and down those plenums. And usually it's from neglected systems. Every once in a while, it's because the system isn't dehumidifying properly. You have all that humid air going up. But most of the time, it's because that system is neglected for years and years. And it's something we preach all the time, especially post-remediation, that our clients really need to keep an eye on from there on out to make sure they're keeping their air clean in their house.
Yeah, there's a cost associated with cooling your house in an environment. And it's that we have to use these mechanical systems. And a lot of times they're out of sight. You're not crawling through your attic to inspect the ductwork.
Right.
I don't crawl through my own attic to inspect the ductwork very often. I do now, but not every 6 months to a year. And so having somebody who's knowledgeable do that for you to ensure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's got 3 jobs: cool, dry, filter. It's not cooling is the only thing I would even think of or care about if I wasn't in this industry. If it's cooling, it's working, it's doing its job. But if it's not filtering and it's not drying the air, and ultimately you're not diligent about replacing your filters, then anything that passes by that filter is going to get sucked up into the mechanical part, coat the inside of the mechanicals and the coils and the blower motors, and then be pushed right back out into your ductwork again. And then you add moisture, you are going to grow biolife and molds and all types of things in those systems. And then you are breathing that air. And whether that in turn, causes a high count of spores in the air, okay, maybe it doesn't. But at minimum, if it's growing in that system, then you're being exposed to the off-gassing of the molds and the mycotoxins and things like that are coming out of your ductwork and your vents and things like that. So it's something that needs to be taken seriously for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's helpful. I'm like, that's reminding me to get somebody out here just for maintenance. That's helpful and such a good reminder. So once y'all, either from the inspection side and also the remediation side, I'm sure you'll probably hear back from clients, or do you hear back from them saying how much better they feel? And it may be more after the remediation side, but that have noticed a difference or anything.
Oh yeah.
You follow back up with them, after.
Yeah, on my end of things.
Yeah.
Once we're done doing the remediation and the house is put back together, they immediately can sense that there's a difference in their environment. And this is probably more in your line of work. It takes your body time to recover from things. So it's not always an immediate, 100% turnaround. There are some scars left, and it takes people's, mental scars on top of it. That takes people a while to feel even comfortable going back in those environments in some cases.
Yes. I could go so far into that. Clients and friends and people that have real PTSD when it comes back.
Absolutely. How can you not? Right? I think it's part of the deal. You're in an environment that's making you sick. The thought of going back in there's going to be some stress and anxiety associated with doing that.
We'll use this as a teaser for when you come on ours, Katherine. We could dive into that a little deeper.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And detox and...
Because we got lots of questions for you.
Can't wait. What y'all are doing is awesome and so appreciated on my end and from people like me. Like, I'm trying to get out into the world to help women feel anything against men at all, but that's just my main audience and things like that. But to help them feel heard, supported, validated, and seen, and especially when it comes to chronic symptoms or what I call mystery symptoms. A lot of times those mystery symptoms can be from mold. So I just appreciate y'all, the work that you do and getting the message out on your podcast and validating these people with these symptoms and helping them. I mean, it's your job, but you also want to and have a desire to and a passion to. So I appreciate y'all, your work and everything.
Well, thank you. Yeah, because mold can be the great imitator, if you will, when it comes to symptoms and different illnesses. Our main goal is always to provide people data and hopefully finding it sooner rather than later, because so many people, their story is, I've been trying to figure this out for years. I've been going to different doctors for years. And if we can figure it out sooner rather than later, hopefully we can find those answers for people and save them a lot of money along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that the results after the inspection and also after the mycotoxin test, both of those combined, there's so much validation, like, wow, it's not all in my head that I feel this way and these symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So
It does take that for a lot of people to realize once you see the labs, you see it on paper and you're like, okay,
yeah,
this is what the norm is. And this is what I'm being exposed to every day.
Right.
It's justification. And to what extent it affects you, or at that point, it doesn't really matter. At that point, it doesn't belong there and you need to get a hold of it and figure out how to remove it from the environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Is there anything that you want the Chronic Conversations audience to know, takeaways, where to find you guys? It's going to be in the show notes and all those things too. And also, like, if we want you to come remediate, if we want y'all to come test, inspect our house, how would we do that?
You want me to start, Adam?
Yeah, I'll let you take it.
Yeah. So my first piece of advice anyway would just be to listen to your gut. A lot of people think there's an issue in their home because of how they're feeling, but they keep putting it off, whatever excuse that they're going through in their life, stress, getting older, time of year, what have you. There's always an excuse as why their home can't be the reason why they're feeling the way they do. And a lot of times it may not be the root cause, but it's certainly not going to help, your health at all. So listen to your gut. If you think there's something going on, give somebody a call to come do a deep dive. If they don't find anything, awesome. But if they do, need to know what you're up against and start planning and prioritizing how to attack it. But yeah, people can find us at The Mold Show. We're on most streaming platforms. It's just The Mold Show. We have a lot of guests on that talk about the health side of things, the assessment side of things, just the home health side of things. And then we also have people on that kind of educate from the health side of things, how mold can impact people. So a lot of very interesting conversations and things that honestly we never even really thought about either that can be very eye-opening. And from the inspection side of things, a company I work for, Certified Mold Assessments, you can find us online. We're also on Instagram at Certified Mold Assessments. Just follow us there. And if you have any questions, give us a call. We're always available to chat and walk people through next steps.
Well said, man. Well said. Yeah, I agree with your sentiment. I encourage you to talk about it. And if nobody wants to listen, tell us your story. You can reach out to us, through our socials, through the Mold Show and DM, or send us an email at moldshow@gmail.com. If you just want to kind of talk about your situation, we're always there to listen. And in some cases, we have people on to share their mold story. It's hard to talk about for a lot of people because it affects their health, their children, their husbands' health, or their wives' health, their marriage, all of it.
It really does.
And sharing your story matters. It does. You never know who's going to hear it that is confused with what they're going through and is going to feel seen and validated, and how that might lead them to the next step of their journey.
Right. Yeah. We all often find ourselves in that role of trying to guide people through these processes.
Yeah.
Me and Sean laugh all the time because one of the first comments ever was like, "You guys do a podcast about mold." So
in your free time.
Yeah, it's become a running joke. But yeah, we enjoy helping people. We enjoy, we learn a lot as well from this process. We're here for you guys if you guys need some direction, for sure.
Awesome. We all are doing good things. Keep it up.
Thanks for having us, Katherine. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks, Katherine.
Same here. We'll definitely be in touch. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Chronic Conversations. I hope you're walking away with a little more clarity, hope, and inspiration for your healing journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love for you to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Every share helps this show reach more women who deserve to feel seen, heard, and validated. And if we're not connected yet, come say hi on Instagram. I'm at Call Me Katherine Rose. Plus, you can check out free tools and resources for your wellness journey anytime at callmekatherinerose.com. And until next time, take care. And here's to thriving well, no matter where you are on your journey.